Zelda. We rely on your knight, and that legendary sword he carries. Our last line of defense will be Link.
Link. Hello everyone, JesterGio here, and welcome back to the channel. You know, when it comes to the survivors that Netties are adding, they aren't as innovative as the hunters are. When you look at the hunter roster, you have hunters that break the mold of the game and have completely different playstyles from one another. Even today, you still see Netties try new things with hunters to make them stand out from one another. The biggest examples of this are Goatman only dealing chip hits outside of his ability and Hullabaloo having no attack recovery. Compare that to survivors who, while they do have differences between each other, don't really innovate the survivor formula. The closest we've gotten to this is Puppeteer with his healing debuff and Faro Lady with her invisibility. However, I don't really count them since Puppeteer's is meant to be his debuff and Faro's is meant to be her base power. That's where the newest survivor, Wendy, differs from the survivor cast, as her ability works vastly different from the other survivors in this game. On the surface, Wendy appears to work the same as the other survivors with no real differences between the cast. However, what makes Wendy so different between the other survivors is how strong her abilities are and how much durability they use. It's a bit complicated to explain, so I highly recommend checking out my first look video before tuning into this one. However, I will try to explain them here as well alongside the benefits to being able to customize your ability. Before we get into that, though, there were a few changes made to Wendy when she came from the test server to live. Because of that, it'll be best to explain them all before getting into that. So without further ado, let's get into everything that has been changed about Wendy.
Into memories, echoing voices, come on over to me.
Compared to Knight, who didn't really get much changes when he came to the live servers, Wendy actually did get a decent amount of changes. Most of them are nerfs, however, so don't expect Wendy to be a beast if you haven't tried her yet. With that said, what exactly are the changes that they did to Wendy? For starters, they optimized her landing and end lag whenever Stratus ends. This isn't really a change and more so just optimization that I'm sure no one will notice. Don't worry, the next set of changes aren't as small as this one. The next change they did was nerf the effects of Gale, nerfing the speed, width, and the pull time of Gale. While the width changes only apply to strong Gale, the rest of the changes are an overall nerf to Gale itself. Additionally, they changed the durability consumption of Gale from 28% and 38% to 32% and 40%. These changes are massive, as they weaken how effective Gale can be in normal containment. The durability changes don't really matter, since the durability numbers still allow you to get either 3 to 4 bottle uses depending on how strong or weak you make the win. However, these changes will definitely make Wendy feel less oppressive to go against while still making her impactful. Additionally, talents that reduces the knockback the hunter receives, such as Tolerance, will work on Wendy's Gale now. This can make Wendy's Gale a lot easier to deal with, though I'm sure this'll only be helpful on people who bring insolence. Other than that, I don't see anyone bringing only Tolerance solely to counter her. Next is Stratus, which got a nerf that seems minor on paper, but is actually an extremely massive change. Put simply, the duration of Stratus has been reduced by 0.4 seconds, no matter how strong or weak you make it. On its own, it's a pretty decent nerf that reduced how long you can stay on the cloud, which could be impactful. However, the reason why it is a massive change is due to the amount of routes it shuts down. For those of you who don't know, in the test server, Wendy's Stratus was kinda busted as it allowed Wendy to reach second story areas. This led to Wendy doing insane routes, such as making it to the second story of the moonlit house from the second stop, which would guarantee that Wendy escaped chase. This change makes these spots impossible to do now, which is a substantial nerf to Wendy's Stratus. A much needed one as well, since it means she can no longer reach absurd areas with the hunter having no way to chase her. Honestly, the fact that this same thing happened with Arrow and they didn't learn their lesson from him is absurd. They also made it so you can't enter the birdcage cipher via the top hole, making the doorway and the window the only ways to enter from there. Finally, they extended the cooldown of her bottle, increasing it from 8 seconds to 10 seconds. Once again, very minor nerf that won't really affect your gameplay as Wendy in all honesty. With that said, that pretty much covers all the changes made to Wendy and her kit. Honestly, I feel all the changes they made to her were good changes, as they address very problematic aspects about her kit. It's really rare for netties to fix the issues plaguing a character in the test server, so I have to give credit when it's due. That being said, I'm sure you all are wondering how I feel about Wendy based off my own experiences. I have a lot to say about Wendy, both praises and grievances I have with her kit, so let's move on and talk about the good and the bad.
Sound of the wind defiles me. Should I have foreseen its earlier?
After playing as Wendy for myself, a lot of my feelings are a bit conflicting to put it lightly. While she does have some amazing things in her kit that make her amazing to play as, she also has a lot of things that I just did not like when playing as her. Don't get me wrong, I do think she's a fun character to play as and I do believe she can be a very strong survivor. However, there are some big problems with Wendy and I feel it's best to get them out of the way first before getting into the good. To start things off, I have to say that one of the biggest problems I have with Wendy so far is the ability disparity. Wendy is a very unique survivor, as she has 3 abilities she can choose to use at any point. These abilities share durability, so it forces you to pick and choose which one to use in any given situation. However, from experience, it often feels like Gale is the best ability to use at any given situation and that it isn't worth using Stratus and Rainfall. Rainfall is pretty obvious as to why, you typically aren't gonna need to use Rainfall when you are in a chase. However, as for Stratus, I never ended up using it in a chase ever and that has to do with the cost of Stratus versus the distance it provides. For a normal hunter with no movement abilities, the distance you gain from Stratus isn't actually that bad. However, most of the hunters in the game do have a way of quickly catching up to you, making the distance you gain from Stratus negligible. Not only that, but there is very little reason for you to use the shorter Stratus cloud compared to the bigger one. Due to short Stratus being close to the ground, it can allow the hunter to hit Wendy while using it. That poses another problem, however, as you end up losing a bit of distance you gain if you decide to use strong Stratus. Because you're above ground when using strong Stratus, Wendy is forced into the drop-down animation when Stratus ends. Again, when against a hunter who can't catch up, this isn't really a bad thing for Wendy since they won't be able to catch up during that time. However, given that most of the high-tier hunters do have a mobility option, it makes Stratus far weaker for kiting. This has the consequence of making Gale the most viable kiting option in most situations. Even then, Gale has its own list of problems that will make it feel ineffective. While not the case for strong Gale for obvious reasons, it can be extremely easy to miss weak Gale. Weak Gale has a very small hitbox, meaning you need to be extremely precise with it or you'll miss. Now, this isn't a bad thing as it basically adds much needed risk to using weak Gale in comparison to strong Gale. However, that still doesn't take away from the fact that missing this ability is very costly. If you're in range to use Gale against a hunter, it almost always means you will be taking a hit if you were to miss Gale. This not only means you die faster, which is obviously bad, but you also now waste an ability use and your item is now on cooldown. You could remedy this by making the Gale bigger, but it will consume a lot more of the bottle to do so. On top of that, there is just a chance that Gale will simply not push the hunter back. From playing Wendy, I've come to the conclusion that the hitbox for Gale is on the front side of it and nothing more. Because of that, as long as the hunter isn't directly in front of the wind, there is a chance they can break free from Gale. Not only that, but there are some cases where the hunter will walk into the Gale radius at just the right angle and they will be unaffected by the Gale. Once again, it can be fixed by making it bigger, but it's still a problem that plagues weak Gale. Gale also counts as a stun rather than a pushback, meaning you can cancel the hunter's attack recovery if you land Gale mid-recovery. If that's not bad enough, it's in a weird place where it also isn't a stun, so you can't use Gale to balloon rescue. Similar to Thief, it's also ineffective if the hunter doesn't need to get close to you to deal damage. Hunters like Ripper, DQ, Axe Boy, and Violinist, who can attack you through obstacles, will not have to worry about Gale, leaving you defenseless if you rely on it. Finally, due to Tolerance now working on Gale, it's especially weaker now against Insolence users. This makes her even less effective on the top-tier Inso hunters, such as Ivy and Hullabaloo, so it's best to keep that in mind. Next is Stratus, which also has its own set of problems that I feel make it not worth it over Gale. I already covered the distance issue with Stratus, so I won't really go too deep into it. However, another issue that I noticed with Stratus is that the flexibility of Stratus is not as impactful as the flexibility as Gale. Gale may have a few problems, but it's still an extremely good ability in the sense that you can use it in almost every situation. The ability to push the hunter back is really good, whether it be for kiting, transitioning, support, or rescues. It's that versatility that Stratus doesn't have, which makes it my default ability to use when I play Wendy. With Stratus, there really isn't much versatility or utility to it compared to Gale. Don't get me wrong, there is still some utility to Stratus that I will go over later, it's just not nearly as extensive as the utility Gale has. Combine that with the landing lag and it can cause you to die quickly if you don't make it to a kiting area with Stratus. However, I think what kills the potential of me using Stratus in most situations is the cost necessary to use it. By using Gale, you can have up to a max of 4 bottle uses depending on how you use it. This is enough to cycle your bottle during a kite, allowing you to extend your kite dramatically. Even if you use the bigger Gales, you still have a total of 3 uses with the bottle, which is still really good. With Stratus, the max is still 3 uses like before, however the total for using the strong Stratus drops to 2 uses. This, combined with Stratus drop-down lag, makes it extremely bad to use as your primary kiting ability. Unless you're in a situation where you will gain value from it, you basically only have 2 chances to buy time for the team with Stratus. Compare that to Gale, which has a potential of 4 chances per bottle and more utility, and it's no contest what is the better ability to use. Even if you do find a situation where Stratus is better to use, there are certain hunters who can get around that and make Stratus worthless. The best hunter who will be able to shut Stratus down is Ivy, as using Yeek's Scream will force Wendy off of her cloud. You also won't be able to use Stratus well against Goatman, as his cages will trap you in any area, making you unable to use its distance to its fullest. Stratus could work well against Hullabaloo early game, but it definitely won't be effective once he is able to use Trapeze. Because of all of that, I just don't think Stratus is worth using compared to Gale. It's too situational in use and the cost to using it is too steep compared to Gale. There are use cases for Stratus that do make it extremely good to use, but we'll go more into that later. For now, let's talk about the final ability Wendy has in her item, that being Rainfall. Rainfall is an ability I praised in the test server and I still find is a very good ability. However, I'm not as ignorant as people think I am and understand there are still flaws with Rainfall. One of the problems with Rainfall that I got commented on a bit in my first look video is the fact that you cannot gain Rainfall while decoding a cipher. This means you will end up needing to sacrifice decoding time to heal, unlike other heals like Dublin, which can heal while decoding. While this is a bad thing, I don't think this is as bad as some people make it out to be. That mainly has to do with how context-sensitive Rainfall is compared to the other abilities Wendy can use. Most of the time, you really don't want to use Rainfall on survivors who can just decode rather than fill a major role. Either that or it's better to just heal them normally in order to save your bottle for later. You're only gonna be using Rainfall to heal priority survivors, such as your rescuers or your harassers. I would also lump survivors dead on chair who escaped the hunter in this category, but there's a certain problem with rainfall that makes this idea fall flat. When a rescuer or harasser is healing via rainfall, they usually aren't decoding during that time. Whether it be healing via whistle or Dublin, they're usually getting ready to perform their job again. Because of that, I don't think the decoding aspect of this is that big of a deal in terms of passive healing. Now, it can be a bigger deal if you want to heal yourself from rainfall, which makes it feel worse. It's especially bad since Wendy has a debuff that makes her generate wetness much slower compared to teammates. Compare that to a barmaid, who can heal herself while decoding, and it can make Wendy not very desirable. Once again, this is entirely context sensitive, so I don't think this will affect you too badly, however. Because of that, I didn't find this a problem in my video, and I still don't find this a problem with Wendy as is. What I do find a problem, however, is just the lack of clarification to the team that you are using rainfall on them. No matter who you are playing with as survivor, you will always know when the healer is trying to heal you. Barmaids will run towards you to give their bottles to you while Psycho needs you to accept their whistle to heal you. This is really good, as it allows them to seamlessly heal you without any issues. However, Wendy doesn't really give any indication that she wants to heal you with rainfall. Whenever Wendy summons her rain cloud, it takes about 1 second before it begins raining and generating wetness. Because of that, most players won't even know Wendy is trying to heal them. Additionally, Wendy's animations are the same when it comes to her abilities, so it's hard to tell which ability she is using at that moment. There is no indicator for when you are under a rain cloud, so you won't be able to tell if it's trying to heal you if you're running or decoding. The rain itself isn't highlighted to you, so unless you're looking up and see the highlighted cloud, you probably won't think there is one on the map. To top it all off, the game doesn't allow Wendy to show the team that she has a rainfall cloud ready to heal their team ahead of time. The game doesn't show the team that Wendy has her rainfall on hand like it would tell the team barmaid is healing via the HUD or psychologist is healing via a text prompt. This means the teammate has to just guess that all Wendy players will give them rainfall when approaching, which I don't blame them for just assuming she won't. Now, this wouldn't be too big of a problem if you were given the ability to tell the team which bottle you have ready using the item status ping. However, unfortunately, the game does not update your item status whenever you select the ability you are using, which is dumb. This results in teammates just assuming Wendy players are not gonna heal them using the rainfall and just run away from the cloud or decoding with the cloud right next to them. Sure, there are times where they do realize I dropped a cloud for them and they heal. But there are times where they don't and I end up wasting a cloud because they ran too far or realized I placed one down too late. The worst part about this is the fact that this issue could have been easily fixed had they made it so item status updates whenever you make an ability from the bottle. It would inform the team that you are willing to drop your heal for them and prevent your bottles from being wasted. Additionally, I think an alternative way you could change rainfall is by making it so rainfall follows survivors you target until they start generating rain. I'm sure some of you don't know this, but when aiming where your rainfall will go, survivors under the area you're aiming at will be highlighted. This is really all it is, but I feel like changing it to allow Wendy to target players would be huge. It would allow Wendy to place the cloud down to follow the survivor she targeted and then stop when it starts raining. This would remove the confusion teammates have with gaining heals and allow you to reliably heal survivors. Honestly, I would prefer them to do any of these changes just to help rainfall's support aspects. However, I think by far the worst part about rainfall has got to be the highlight it grants to everyone, including the hunter. Now, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that rainfall is shown to the hunter as long as they're close enough. It typically feels bad to have the survivors heal behind your back, so accounting for this and making sure survivors heal outside of a certain radius is a good thing. With that said, the highlight of the rain cloud isn't something within a radius, it is a global highlight. Why? Seriously, why is this a thing? This global highlight is the exact reason why I don't think healing survivors from chair with it is worth it. All it does is expose you and your teammates' location to the hunter and tells them where injured survivors are. This is the opposite effect that healers want to provide and is one of the major reasons the other healers are so effective. You are not given a giant, kill me, sign for using those abilities, thus allowing you to safely heal others without worrying of being jumped. All this does is hinders even more potential rainfall has of being used, especially now that warp exists, allowing you to quickly teleport to even completed ciphers. In my opinion, this effect should be outright removed from the game because it completely kills any healing potential she has. The fact that me and a teammate can be across the map when I drop a cloud for a teammate so I can keep decoding, only for the hunter to teleport on us because they saw the rain cloud is despicable. If they really don't want to have Wendy heal someone behind the hunter's back, at least limit the highlight radius of the rain cloud to either 16 to 32 meters. For everyone wondering why the devs never made it so you can see the healing locations of the survivors, this exactly here is why. By far the worst part about Wendy's kit, and I hope NetEase doesn't pull something like this ever again. Honestly, that's really all I have to say about her negatives, since her kit basically revolves around her item. The survivor highlight ability is pretty meh, but it's not really worth talking about in my opinion. I'm sure some of you might assume that me talking about the negatives must mean her kit is really bad or that I didn't enjoy it. However, that could not be further from the truth, as I actually do think Wendy is a really good survivor. Going back to rainfall as an example, there are a lot of problems with it that hold it back from being good. When it works, though, it is an extremely good and reliable healing ability to use for the team. Sure, you can't decode ciphers while rainfall is active, but you can still do other things while rainfall is happening. One of the biggest things you can do during rainfall is healing other teammates. This means if you and another teammate are injured, you can drop a cloud for one of you to be healed by while they heal the other to heal both survivors in one go. This makes resetting a survivor so much easier without the risk of losing your kiting ability. It is also a passive heal and not a character heal, so debuffs such as Puppeteers and Merc are not affected by this heal. Another cool thing about rainfall that isn't talked about much is the fact that the rainfall heal also affects survivors who are on the ground. This doesn't really help much in normal play since the rain cloud is highlighted, but it can help put pressure on the hunter. This works especially well with harassers, like forward or batter, as the hunter is effectively forced to pick up the survivor. If they don't, the survivor will be healed up thanks to rainfall, while picking them up will give the harassers a window to balloon rescue. This could escalate even further if the survivor is close to picking themselves up, as they can pick themselves up and the heal will carry over. This means, in some circumstances, the survivor could go from down to healthy in seconds, which can be absolutely game-changing. Also, while you can't decode while rainfall is healing you, you can still decode while rainfall is healing someone else. As a Wendy player, you won't get yourself in the action too often unless the ciphers are good or your teammate kites next to you. Because of that, being able to just drop a cloud to heal a teammate while you keep decoding is pretty good. The range you can send the cloud is pretty big, so you don't have to worry about getting close to the survivor to drop the cloud. Even if you wanted to heal yourself from the cloud, it really doesn't take long for the cloud to fully heal you, despite her debuff. Yes, there are blatant problems with rainfall and there are some things I would like to see them change about it. However, I do think rainfall itself is a good ability and having a passive heal like that can be game-changing for the team. Next is Stratus, which also has some game-changing stuff tied to it that make it stand out. Remember how I said before that Stratus is not worth using over Gale in most situations? Well, there are certain situations that do make Stratus really good because of the fact that it works similarly to Arrow's hover. This means that strong Stratus will allow Wendy to fly over most of the high wall areas around the map. This can be used to allow Wendy to make it to certain areas and put a lot of distance between her and the hunter. Yes, the consumption rate of Stratus is really high, but there's also a big reason why it is extremely high. While in the air with strong Stratus, you're basically safe from most of the hunter attacks and abilities in this game. Because of that, Stratus can be used as an extremely good transition ability as long as you manage to get into the kiting area. Don't count out weak Stratus, though, because it also has some pretty good use to it. Weak Stratus can still fly over small terrain, so it can be really great for traversing over certain areas quickly. This also includes pallets and windows, since those are low terrain, allowing you to pass through them without the risk of being terror shocked. While most of the absurdly broken spots were removed from the game with the nerfs, there are still some decent spots Wendy can go through. She can still fly through the holes of the arms factory, the bird cage window, and can still fly through the bars on Red Church. So while they did remove a lot of her cheese, she still has some tricks she can perform with Stratus. Finally, because strong status puts you out of danger, it can be used to go in for rescues like arrows hover. This prevents you from getting ambushed while far away from chair, thus increasing the chances for a successful rescue. And with Hullabaloo being added, a character who excels at patrolling, this ability could be a make or break for Wendy. Stratus may be situational and most of the situations in the game don't really favor it. However, that doesn't mean it doesn't have those use cases, and said use cases aren't extremely good. Lastly, I wanted to talk about Gale because I feel like all the negatives I talked about with it don't come even close to the positives I have with it. This is because, while it can be punishing and easy to miss your Gale, landing your Gale can grant you so much distance against the hunter. Due to Gale allowing Wendy to push back the hunter a bit of distance, this opens up a lot of things Wendy can do with Gale. In terms of normal kiting, it allows Wendy to continue kiting the hunter in certain kiting areas. If you feel the hunter is getting a little too close, you can always use Gale as they turn a corner and blow them away. You can also use it in narrow corridors, such as entranceways or hallways, in order to more reliably push them away. Gale can also help while you're transitioning, since landing Gale will basically guarantee you make a kiting area. These two factors increase if the hunter you are pushing collides with a wall, since it will pin the hunter to that wall for a short time. This is really good if you need to perform an action quickly, such as decoding the final cipher or rescuing. Gale can also be used as an extremely good support tool, allowing you to keep the hunter away from your teammates. The fast cooldown and the fact that weak Gale allows for 4 bottle uses can really eat up a lot of time the hunter cannot afford. It can also be paired with other survivors, such as harassers, to keep the hunter pinned while they use their abilities to rescue balloon survivors. The hunter cannot act while they are being pushed back, so Gale can potentially save a teammate if you cooperate with your harassers. The pinning aspect of Gale can also help with survivors who die in the corner, since it can allow that survivor to struggle free if they're far away from any chairs. You can also stop the hunter from chairing in basement using Gale, thus removing any potential of a stuffed basement rescue. Not only that, but because of Gale, Wendy might actually be one of the best pseudo-rescuers in the game. Due to Gale being quick to use, you can often force the hunter to be pinned to a wall or be forced away from the survivor in general. Because they can't act out of this allows you to safely rescue the survivor without the risk of getting stuffed. This works even better if you somehow manage to rescue the survivor without using Gale, as it can be used to assist the rescued survivor's rebound kite. There is just so much versatility and use cases for Gale in the game, that the negatives really don't bog it down in any way. Even against insolence users, which Gale is weaker to, it has been really effective in keeping distance against them, so I still wouldn't count it out yet. However, I think the best part about Gale and the reason why I love it so much is the fact that you don't need strong Gale in order to have an effective pushback. All strong Gale does is increase the width and durability cost of Gale, similar to how strong Stratus only increases height and cost. Because of that, you can have a Gale that goes extremely fast and pushes the hunter back far while only costing the same amount as weak Gale. Yes, the hitbox of Gale is a lot shorter now, but it also gives you 4 uses of your bottle instead of 3 uses. This means you can use 3 weak Gales and still have enough bottle for a strong Gale, a strong Stratus, or Rainfall. There's so much you can do with this little item that I can't help but love Wendy's design despite its flaws. Just like the negatives, there's not much to say about being able to reset what ability you have or being able to see dungeon other than it's nice to have. With that said, though, I think that really sums up my thoughts on Wendy and how strong she is overall. She has a lot of problems that can really hurt you, but there's also a lot to her kit that makes her really strong to have on a team. This honestly might make Wendy similar to Fire Investigator in the sense that she's one of the stronger balanced survivors in this game. Do I think she will be a top-tier meta survivor in the game? Honestly, I don't want to make calls like that until we see her perform in tourney. However, as a ranked survivor, I do think she will be a really good survivor to pick up and play for the team. I will say, I can understand if some people will be hesitant to play Wendy because of how her kit feels. I definitely agree with the 3-star rating Netties gave her because it can be hard to play Wendy effectively. Playing as Wendy myself, it was a struggle at first, but I did manage to pick up on a few things as I played in order to make playing her easier. So, let's finally get into the build and tips you should do when playing as Wendy.
As I look back at
As always, the most important part about starting a new character is figuring out what build you should run on said character. For certain characters, it's very simple to just put a build on based on their role, such as tied-on rescuers. For others, it's not that simple and you need to take some careful consideration when forming a build for them. With Wendy, I feel like that problem isn't really there since her ability allows her to fill any role effectively. Because of that, you are free to pick and choose which final talent you want to run depending on what role you want to fill for the team. For me, I like to run knee-jerk on Wendy since the distance you can pull from it pairs exceptionally with Gale. Additionally, I like to run mutual support on her to find teammates who are injured to go and help. Her base kit highlight is fine, but I feel mutual support's global range is just overall better. Finally, I like having Doctor on Wendy in order to save my bottles and heal normally. Rainfall is a context-sensitive heal that shouldn't really be used for every single heal, so being able to heal survivors faster is really nice. It also just allows you to save your bottles for kiting and for more valuable healing targets, so I highly recommend bringing it. In terms of actual tips for playing Wendy, you should really come to terms with the fact that Wendy is a very context-sensitive survivor in general. You really need to have a good understanding of the match and the hunter you are playing against in order for you to really be effective with her. For most of these situations, Gale will work well in them, so I highly recommend you use that as your main ability when playing her. Because of that, I highly recommend practicing playing with weak Gale when you want to use it. You get one more use from your item whenever you use weak Gale, but the hitbox of Gale will be pretty small. That's why it's best to practice with it ahead of time to get the hang of using it. The best way to make the strongest weak Gale is to draw within one row. Here's an example of what I mean so you can do this in your matches. Doing this will give you the max speed and push back, but give the width and consumption of weak Gale, allowing you to use it 4 times. When you hold down the Gale button, you will be able to see the crosshair that will tell you where Gale will go at. The problem with that is that you will face the direction of the crosshair when you do so, allowing the hunter to see when you're about to use Gale. Therefore, it's better to just tap the button to release Gale instantly in order to give no indication on when you're using it. Similarly to batter, the best way to aim Gale is by using Wendy's head as the crosshair for Gale. Be careful when using weak Gale, however, as it's very easy to miss with it and missing Gale in general can be costly. If you aren't confident with using it, it's always okay to swap to the more consistent strong Gale for your kiting. You only lose out of 1 extra bottle use, but it'll be much harder for the hunter to dodge Gale in general. Gale can also be used over small terrain, which includes pallets and windows, so be sure to capitalize on that however you see fit. In general, you want to prioritize pushing the hunter back over getting them stuck on an obstacle whenever you can. If you're able to gain distance and pin them at the same time, that's always a good thing to be able to do. However, you will never gain as much distance for pinning the hunter to a wall as opposed to just pushing them away. This can become crucial when it comes to rescues, as separating the hunter from the chaired survivor should always be a priority. While Wendy's ability can be used to help harass for your teammates, you really shouldn't be filling the role of a harasser with her. Because your bottles are so limited and you don't have any way to balloon rescue, it's best to let your teammate do their own thing while you decode. Once the game has progressed enough, however, then I can see harassing as Wendy being a worthwhile option. Otherwise, let any harassers in your team fill that role while you decode. For Stratus, it's best to identify the obstacles she can and cannot fly over while using it. I highly recommend going into practice mode in order to figure that out, since there are a fair amount of things she can and can't fly over. You should also keep in mind the risks of using Stratus whenever you plan on using it, specifically the drop-down it has. Honestly, I feel Wendy could really benefit from the jetpack landing mechanics, where it automatically drops you down and grants very little lag. If NetEase could buff something about Stratus, it should definitely be by implementing that. Stratus works the best if you need a way to get into a kiting area or if you're going in for rescues, since you are relatively safe in the air. It can also keep you safe against hunter powers such as Naiad's Abyss and BQ's Mirrors, so Stratus can be really helpful in those situations. If you're scared of getting terror shocked against the hunter, you can always use Stratus to fly over pallets and windows while gaining some speed off it. Similar to Gale, you can make a beefy weak Stratus by drawing your Stratus on a diagonal row like this. Finally, Stratus elevation will stay the way it is no matter what, so you won't be able to ascend stairs when riding on Stratus. Because of that, though, it means you can fly in the air if you ride off a ledge, allowing you to gain a bit of distance while the hunter is forced to drop down. Finally, there's Rainfall, and I'll be honest, there's really not much to say about Rainfall. Rainfall is an ability you probably won't be using a lot of the time and will only really use it for those valuable survivors, like rescuers or harassers. However, if the team is struggling with health states, then it's okay to drop a rain cloud for survivors to heal from. If the hunter you are going against has warp, teleport, or the ability to teleport, be careful when using Rainfall. Since Rainfall highlights the cloud globally, it can cause you to get ambushed by the hunter whenever they choose. Make sure the hunter has no way to reach you before dropping a cloud for you or your teammate to heal from. It's always better for you to use your cloud to heal teammates rather than healing yourself. You have a natural debuff to Rainfall, so in the case the both of you need to be healed, let your teammate heal you while they heal from Rainfall. If you are the only person who needs to be healthy, whether it be for rescues or protecting, then it is best to heal yourself using Rainfall. Remember that Rainfall can also be used to heal down survivor and its progress carries over even if someone goes down. Because of that, you can force some pressure on the hunter by using Rainfall on any down survivors. For drawing tips in general, I recommend drawing multiple giant circles when creating Rainfall, since it helps increase the efficiency of the heal. Finally, and this is a tip reserved for all these skills, I cannot stress enough how context sensitivity is key when using Wendy. The fact of the matter is that there are some situations where Gale will not be effective in a given situation and the same can be said for the other skills. With Rainfall being highlighted to the hunter and the giant cost Stratus has, you really need to think about when you want to use these abilities. Wendy isn't a character who you can spam her item without a care in the world, since using these items in the wrong situation can lead to you or your teammate being killed. Gale has the most versatile use cases compared to the other skills, but that doesn't mean it isn't context sensitive itself. Poor usage of Gale can often hinder you or even benefit the hunter from canceling attack recovery. That is why, in my opinion, knowing when to use her abilities and knowing how to efficiently use them matters so much when playing as Wendy. Wendy is a really easy character to pick up, but an extremely hard character to master due to how her skills work. I can understand how some of the clunkiness and downsides she has with her skills can be frustrating for players to get the grasp of. However, as always, practice and experience will come a long way whenever you play as Wendy. So keep playing Wendy and growing your experience, as Wendy can be an extremely fun and powerful survivor if you are able to use her strengths well. With that said, I think that about wraps up all of my thoughts about Wendy. I do love her and I do believe there is potential to be had with her kit. However, there are some problems with Wendy that really get under my skin that I hope will be addressed. Even if they aren't, I don't think they take away from how strong Wendy can be if used well. Survivors aren't meant to be busted in any way, so it's amazing that Wendy has some flaws to hold her back. I definitely look forward to playing her more in my matches, especially to try out her niche stuff, like Stratus. On that note, that's all the time I have for today's video. The next video will either be that Postman video or a video on the balance changes for the end of the season, so look forward to that. Until then, thank you so much for watching and I will see all of you next time.